everyone. I'm Ian Eigelhart, and I'm here with Faith LeGrande in her home on March 15th, 2023. It's around 2:30 p.m., and we're going to be talking about Faith's experiences finding community in SLO. Do I have your consent to record you and record your audio and use it for my class?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. So to start, can you introduce yourself, tell us your name, background and pronouns, anything?
My name is Faith LeGrande. My pronouns are she, her, and I moved to San Luis Obispo in 2018. Before that, I lived in a few other places, and I'm the founder of Art and Soul SLO, which is a local nonprofit where we create inclusive and interactive events for the community to... Oh my God, I messed up already.
It doesn't matter. It's okay.
Okay.
No worries.
I'm the founder of Art and Soul SLO, which is a local nonprofit where we create interactive and inclusive events to cultivate community, connection, and creativity.
Awesome. So where are you from? The dreaded question.
I was born in Georgia, but then I moved to Bandung, Indonesia when I was 4.5 years old. I lived there until I was 15 years old. I was an evangelical missionary kid. And then I lived in Delaware till I was 22, and then I moved out here. So home is a kind of, I've kind of picked my own home rather than considering where I grew up my home.
Totally. That sounds like a really unique experience. I can definitely relate. Can you just tell us about your childhood, like how that was?
Yeah.
What you were like?
So I was a very adventurous and loud kid, and I was the youngest of 5 children, and my parents were, they're very passionate about their work, and so I was homeschooled for a while until 4th grade, and then I went to an international school. My international school was accredited for American studies, so I still got an American education, and it was honestly a very whitewashed education system, and we lived alongside the Indonesian culture, and my parents worked to evangelize in that area, and I was taught to grow up as an evangelical as well, and I spent a lot of time in my childhood doing sports and being involved in clubs at the school and socializing a lot. And then as I grew up, around 12 years old, I started experiencing severe chronic pain and physical illness. So I had to stop doing sports and the clubs that I was involved in. And then we moved to America, so I had to establish community in America and go through the culture shock and continue to process that. But I have always found comfort in seeking community more so than feeling like I have a community, I guess, and because I've always felt like the outsider from where I grew up. And over there I was the minority, which is a very different experience than being a minority in America. So seeing the parallels and the huge differences has been a journey in itself of recognizing that although I felt like an outsider, there's different ways of everybody feeling like an outsider.
Yeah.
Even if they're in their home country.
I can totally relate to that. Me and my sister used to feel like foreigners in our own land, which might be kind of problematic to say.
Yeah, I feel like it's a really hard topic to talk about because it's, as a TCK, it's you have this experience growing up in another culture, but then when you're brought back to your passport country, you don't know anything about it, and you'll get laughed at for things that everybody else knows, or you want to fit in and you don't want the topic of where you grew up to take over everything. You want to be known for who you are now and where you're living now. But a lot of the times with American culture, people like to be like, well, where are you from? How can we relate to our pasts? And then
Yeah,
it's like when you have a past that nobody can relate to, it's just very isolating.
totally. Just for the listeners, Faith and I both identify as TCKs or culture kids. So we both grew up um, abroad and then came back to the States. And apparently, no one in the States calls it the States, which I think is funny.
Really?
Yeah, that's like a telltale sign.
Yeah.
Um, but you said after living in Indonesia, you moved to Delaware and then Slow.
Yeah, and so Delaware is also a funny place to be from in America because a lot of the times people don't even know that it's a state, and until Joe Biden became president, people didn't know Delaware existed. So it's like not only am I was raised in another country, but I was raised in this state that not a lot of people in the States know about. And so either way, answering where I'm from is always like a I don't know, a hard question to answer because it's like it leads to so many other questions.
Totally. That's funny. So how did you decide to come to Slow?
So I had spent um, after high school, I had visited my sister out here, and she was going to Cuesta. She had a friend from Indonesia who lived in Slow, and decided to follow her out here and go to school here. So I learned about Cuesta from my sister and visited here, and I really liked the area. But I was still trying to figure out adulthood for myself after high school. So the next like 3 or 4 years, I would visit California and go to San Diego and Los Angeles and Slow on my own. And I was really interested in modeling at the time, so I would book photo shoots in those areas and try to get to know the artist communities and see where I felt that I fit in, which of course, I just always felt even more like an outsider coming from the East Coast to the West Coast and trying to figure out where I fit in. But I found that like LA and San Diego and San Francisco were a bit too of like busy lifestyle for me, and Slow just seemed to have like a little bit of everything that I had known from like Delaware and Indonesia but mixed into one. So it's like in Indonesia there was mountains everywhere and there was beautiful sights, but in Delaware it's really flat. So it's like moving here I got to have the familiar scenery of places to adventure and to explore, and then also the small town feel of like there's a lot of mom and pop shops and businesses and people that have grown up here. And so I felt that it was kind of a mixture of where I'd lived in the past and not too busy for me to create a future within.
Yeah, that's really funny to think of Slow as a combination of Delaware and Indonesia. I never would have thought about that. But you said you kind of found some community amongst artists and in the modeling industry, and then you also had your sister and her friend here in Slow.
Yeah, so my sister had gone to college here from like 2012 to 2014, I believe. And then she actually met her now husband at Target, which is like down the street from where I'm living right now. And so then they moved back to Delaware. And by the time that I'd moved here in 2018, I didn't have any family in this area or anybody familiar. It was just kind of, I knew that I needed to start a life for myself. So I moved out here, and partially was also to be in a warmer climate because with my chronic pain conditions, having the seasons change all the time in Delaware and having grown up on the equator, it was becoming really stressful to manage my symptoms. And Slow has pretty consistent good weather, so that was a big motivator as well.
Awesome. So how has your experience been finding community in Slow?
The first like few years that I was here, I was my symptoms were still really hard to manage, and so I was like a hermit at home a lot. But fortunately, two of my roommates had also moved here from Delaware at different times, and so we all had that connection. And then I started to get to know friends through my roommates, and so I really didn't start building like like seeking outside of my immediate community until I began Art and Soul. And between that, there was just a lot of mental illness that I was personally struggling with that led to like a lot of isolation and depression and feeling like I just needed, I guess I would just isolate a lot before I started Art and Soul. So it was kind of a, I don't know. I had like I had found like my chosen family and the people who had lived through my transition of life here. But I knew that I wanted to continue reaching out to people and to continue finding others like me who felt like an outsider and who were seeking community, and find others that like experience similar things as me. And so I felt like through creating my own gathering space, then I could find all types of people within SLO that that I may connect with, or they may find others to connect with. And I've always like had a lot of joy in like connecting my friends to other friends. And so that kind of, I don't know, in a way it all happened naturally because I was always hosting things at my home and wanting to connect my friends to other people I'd met. Even if I barely knew them, I'd be like, oh, like your personality would click with this person. I want you two in the same room. And then those events kept growing in just like a small home gathering. And then I decided to create actual events out of my home.
That's really beautiful. We've definitely all been able to enjoy in your hosting abilities. You're great at that. Do you think your involvement with the queer community has come from a place of relating to them, or your own identity, or having relationships with queer people, or where did that come from?
So yeah, with being raised as an evangelical kid, like queer culture and existence was not celebrated. It wasn't talked about. It was very looked down upon, and that was like really upsetting for me to realize growing up, because it's like they had taught us a lot about how anybody that's non-Christian, you should like not be in community with them because it could impact your salvation. And then I realized that a lot of the people that were deemed non-Christian were just people existing, and that was just their identities were being scrutinized for something that like they were just expressing in themselves. And so personally, like my queer journey has been an ongoing thing that I'm understanding, because a lot of like for 21 years I basically felt like I wasn't able to even like explore or iterate what I was feeling or experiencing, and I was just trying as hard as I could everywhere I was to fit in and to have like a partner, because I didn't have like a supportive family. I would always seek out a partner to be by my side, and but it wasn't always like I wasn't always like knowing who I was dating before I started dating them. It was like I would just be like, oh, well, they like me, so I should probably like them back. and I wasn't giving chances to like myself to express to other like female friends that I had and other people that I had developed feelings for. I just felt like that wasn't something I was able to do because I'd never seen representation of that, and I'd never been encouraged to do that. And I don't know. Still very confusing to unpack, I think.
Totally.
But also to see, I think like a lot of other queer people have experienced this, or even just siblings of queer people, where my brother came out openly as gay when he was in college, and I saw my parents' responses to that, and I saw my siblings' responses to that, and I saw other friends from our background in Indonesia and people around America that we knew respond to that, and it was all very negative, and it was really and I felt grateful that like he lived elsewhere so that he didn't have to hear those things head on, but I was still hearing them and internalizing them and feeling less and less like I could express myself. So I think that also contributed to me moving away, because I was like, if I can start somewhere and just kind of introduce myself as me, and then people will take it or leave it.
Yeah.
But trying to convince people that you've been raised around or known for a long time that who you are as a person is okay is very exhausting. And to see the judgments that they cast on everybody else adds to that exhaustion.
So, how do you think living in SLO has compared to your experience living elsewhere, and how that has affected your journey?
I think, like, with, yeah, a lot of the, some of the identity things that I've struggled with just overlap with each other. So, like in Indonesia, I was the minority because I was a white person there. And now I live in SLO, where it's 88% white. And it's like, it's hard to find people that I feel that I can connect with, even though I'm white myself. It's really confusing to process that I still get culture shock being surrounded by so many white people, because where I was raised, and even in Delaware, there's much more diversity. And so then on top of that, there being the lack of queer representation, I think it's just like, I kind of forgot the question.
That's okay. It was, how does the community in SLO compare to where you're from, or how has being in SLO affected the way that you're learning about yourself and learning about the community? Like, does anything about SLO really affect that or help that or hinder that?
I think, yeah, so on the East Coast, like, I feel like it was very normalized to have like yeah, be heteronormative and to have like a 9 to 5 and a retirement plan and all these like structured things that were just kind of like, if you had a hobby that you were interested in, or you would just kind of like put that, like it was assumed that that was going to end at some point and you'd have to settle into the system. Whereas in SLO, I felt like there was this freedom of everybody pursues multiple things at once, and and it's like normal to have a job and your hobbies and your outdoor activities, and to like be trying to get involved with local community things, because there's more things happening regularly because the weather is so good here. And so that's like helpful because there's more opportunity to get to know the community, compared to on the East Coast. I felt like in the summertime you could get out there and meet people, but the rest of the year a lot of people hibernate. And so when it comes to my, I think like I was starting to go to more art events locally in SLO, but there wasn't any like blatant representation of the queer community, and that it just still seemed like something kind of swept under the rug within SLO. And I think that I just kind of felt like there wasn't a place that was like, I don't know, like there wasn't somewhere that people could like, there wasn't as, I don't know, there wasn't like a place that people could just like hang out and do art together and connect with each other and feel like it was a consistent safe space for the queer community. And even though I was still understanding where I fit into the queer category, it was, I don't know. It's so hard to answer.
No, that's okay. You're totally good. So, kind of on that note, what is art and soul?
Yeah, I think that's where my brain just keeps jumping to, is like,
No,
talk about
follow
art
it wherever you want.
So what is art and soul? Or how did it start?
Yeah, both. Anything.
Okay. Well, yeah, I had started vending at local art events, and I realized that that was a really stressful venture for me because I don't have a car, and I have like my chronic illness that like causes me to have a lot of symptoms throughout the day. So I didn't always feel that I had like the support at events that was needed in order for me to be comfortable and to thrive as an artist. And then I also didn't feel that there was just like I wasn't able to maintain socializing and keeping up with everybody because I'd be so exhausted from participating in the event. And so I wanted to, I basically was needing to find a way to meet community and share my art and get experience vending, but not really leave my house. And so I wanted, and I knew that like my backyard was a really spacious area that could host a lot of people, and that there were so many like lovely artists within SLO that I'd wanted to get to know, but I'd been held back from getting to know due to my own symptoms and work, and you know, just keeping up with adulthood is stressful in itself. So I wanted to create an event in my backyard that would host local artists that I had admired and been wanting to meet but didn't have the time to, and that I could gather, just be open about it being a place for queer representation, because I felt that like art and queer culture are very overlapped, but that's not often like emphasized. And so, and also just with like the, I think with post-COVID, like a lot of people were struggling with like social isolation and not knowing how to get back into social gatherings. And so I felt that all of these issues that were coming up in my head collided together, and were like, why not just host something in my backyard where everybody can get together? It's more of a homey feel. I can invite artists that I've been wanting to meet and support, find a way for them to be able to sell their work, and I can celebrate their work, and we can get to know each other in a cozy setting. And it's just kind of grown from there.
So you said the first fairs were at your home and in your backyard. What were those like?
Well, the first one, yeah, I was definitely intrigued to see how it would turn out, because a lot of the people that were signing up I'd never met in person. So I was like, oh no, what are they expecting? Like, it's not like a venue, it's just my yard, and I'm just decorating it with all these cheap decorations. And but I was making sure that like it looked like a place that you want to explore more. So it was that we had like let me see, like this was the first flyer for our very first fair. And I just created it simply with like like one of my old paintings, and I advertised it as an outdoor event gathering local artists and raising awareness of activism and holistic resources within the SLO community, which is what my original goal was. But to find all those connections and gather that rapport, like that takes time. And so it was a big goal to put out there. But I was grateful that I was able to gather like we had like live music and a shibari artist and like live paintings, and there's like all these different vendors that we had like hosted at the very first day. And it was just, everybody was really wholesome, and we got to, because there hadn't been a lot of traffic, or there hadn't been this event before, it was very low key, and everybody was able to actually spend time with each other and like get to know the other artists. And I'd overhear things that I'd been saying to other artists, like, oh, I've been wanting to meet you, but like we're always busy at the fair, we can't, or like at each event, so like we can't like chat. And I was concerned that like with how low key the first one was, that it that vendors wouldn't be making sales, and that wouldn't grow from there. But afterwards, everybody was telling me they wanted to meet again, they wanted to have another one, because it was just nice to like be able to connect with all the other artists and to have interactive things to do. And so after that first event, then that night I just started planning for the next month, and I was like, I'm just going to do this every month. And I don't know, on like a mental health side of things, I had just felt very like isolated within my experience, and that there were so many complexities to it. And I really wanted to create a space where people could just kind of be and not have to explain themselves, which is, I don't know, it's hard to put together because it's like the queer experience is very hard to portray to everybody. And it's like I wanted people to show up and not have to explain themselves, but also feel like if they wanted to explain and express themselves that they could. And so figuring out that balance throughout the months has been hard, because I want to make sure that we're providing representation and opportunity for all of these marginalized communities within SLO, but also not like putting the spotlight on them when it's not wanted. Because it's like I don't want them to feel like they're there because they're queer or there because they're BIPOC. I want them to just feel like they're welcome there as they are, and that those parts aren't, I don't know, it's like that's why they're there, but it's also not like, it's not like a token diversity thing. It's like we're all here together because we have these complex experiences and we want to connect with each other.
Totally. Like, those are all valuable aspects of people, but that's not what makes us valuable.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, how did Art and Soul become a center for queer community?
I think the community really did that. Just by showing up each month, being enthusiastic about like the it's weird to talk about because a lot of it at first was just my ideas because I was so I didn't know how to work as a team, and I didn't know how to I didn't have the confidence to reach out and be like, what does the community want to see? What does the community want more of? Because it felt like any of those answers would be a lot of pressure when it was already just like a brainstorm of my own. And so like, I don't know, seeing it as like a what did you say, like a center?
A center for queer community.
Yeah, it's just kind of like surreal because it's like the community is what makes the community by showing up, by sitting at the art tables, by coming in and being like, I just came by to stop by, but now it's 3 hours later and I've made 4 pictures. Like, it's like, cool, like you expressed yourself, you got that out, you had a little art therapy, you maybe chatted with a few people along the way, and like the enthusiasm that the community brings is, I think, what makes it the center for queer community, and the way that people have been responsive to, like, without without all the rainbow decorations at the Art and Soul Fair and at all of our events, like those people they're our rainbow. And they're the ones that like really bring the personality, the connections, the conversations, the creativity. Without the community showing up, we wouldn't have a community.
Yeah.
And so Art and Soul is just the entity that carries that community and can consistently provide at least one monthly space for that community to gather. And it's like there's this like-mindedness amongst our attendees that I really appreciate, where it's just like, come as you are. And if you want to sit and listen to the music, or you want to sit and draw and listen to the music, or you want to interact with a vendor, or you want to dissociate while you're surrounded by a bunch of queer people, like do what you got to do to get through that day and have the moments that are going to get you through. I don't know.
That's awesome. It seems like you were a catalyst for something that the community was already really hungry for, and something that was long overdue.
Thank you.
So how did that evolve into it being a regular establishment at Bliss Cafe?
Yeah, within the last year, there's been a lot of learning curves. So the Bliss Cafe, transitioning from the backyard to Bliss Cafe was due to legal reasons. And so we were having the events in my backyard, and I thought that it was courteous of me to send out a letter to all of my neighbors and let them know we're continuing these events, and we've been gathering 100 people a month, and you know, just like common knowledge, like this great thing is happening in your neighborhood, come be a part of it or donate if you'd like. But of course that backfired because of legalities, and you're not supposed to host events in residential areas. And so I was we were like 3 days away from hosting another art and soul fair in my backyard. And then I got a letter on my door saying that if I did that, then I'd be fined $700, and then there could be more consequences. So that's when I called Dara from Bliss Cafe, and I was like, hey, like, I've been doing this event in my backyard, and I really don't want to like cancel on all of these vendors and these musicians this Saturday. Is there any way that we could use the Bliss patio? And they were super supportive and accommodating, and Dara had already expressed how much she appreciated the events that I was throwing in my backyard. So that was like a happy rush. I was like, I needed that push to make it more of a serious infrastructure and an established event organization. And without that push, I probably would have sat on it for a while and just continued in my backyard, and I don't know. But so Bliss Cafe really was a catalyst for Art and Soul to continue getting out to the community and to continue hosting a space for people that are just passerbys in downtown or that purposely go to the event. We've had like visitors from other areas that will just like stumble across the event, and then they end up staying the whole day, and like they're on vacation but they're choosing to spend a day at Art and Soul. So it's really beautiful to see those things happen, but without Bliss Cafe's generosity, we wouldn't have been able to continue this monthly as we have been.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, shout out to Bliss Cafe and Dara.
Yeah.
To go in a little different direction, can you tell us about the other events you host, like drag shows, queer prom, and art and awareness?
Yeah, we started with the Art and Soul Fair, which was supposed to be like an arts and awareness fair. So that title never really kicked off for a specific event.
Mm-hmm.
And then as we're starting to explore the awareness aspect more through like our upcoming event, Pride Market. We're gonna have some other nonprofits and local businesses there just to like kind of like spread the word about these are storefront and nonprofits that exist in SLO and are here for you and have resources or have inclusive spaces for the queer community. So we want you to see that they, I don't know, it's like by being at an Art and Soul event, it kind of signals to the queer community, like, we're here for you.
Right.
So just kind of that bringing the community together in that way. Drag Night was an event that we hosted July, August, and September of last year, and that was to help like new-coming drag artists or people that were interested in drag to have a safe space that wasn't as like high-end and glamorous, and they didn't need to have the professional experience to practice drag. And so we wanted to, just as like with the Art and Soul Fair, we wanted to have like newcomer vendors and people that are interested in growing their craft that might not have a business license yet. They just like want to start getting in the groove of it. Drag Night was a catalyst for the for local queer community to explore drag. And then we also recently have, we did an event called Comedy House, which was, we were going to be doing that last April when the event got switched to Bliss Cafe, so we had to cancel that. But I was just really interested last year in finding different ways to, like with the fairs, we were able to support vendors and musicians, but that's not the only types of artists that exist out there. So we wanted to make sure to have an outlet for other performance artists within the area, so that we could have different outlets for each medium. And with only like a year and a half of events under Art and Soul's belt, there's so much room for growth, and seeing that like maybe not just doing every event one after another is the best way, and planning ahead a bit more and making sure that like those artists get the time and presentation that they deserve is more priority now, rather than just like having event after event.
Mm-hmm. What do you think aerial acro performance and other forms of live performance add to Art and Soul?
I think just adding on to that aspect of, we want to have like outlets for each medium of art. And so when you think of performance art, you think like maybe like singing or dancing or drag, but then there's also aerial art, and there's shibari, and there's I wish I could list more off the top of my head, but there's so many types of performance art that exist within SLO, and that I don't even know the titles of them because I haven't seen them be able to have a platform. But it's like you'll see all different types of performance art with like that people express through social media or through their own outlets, but then to provide a stage or the presence for them at an event gives them much more exposure and gives people the opportunity to know, like, oh, there are other art forms that exist, or there's resources towards learning more about this art form. And so I think the aerial artists are a great addition to the events because they just provide like this freedom and this strength and this flexibility that like shows like that you can like I don't know, it, like thinking about like Liz Crosby and like all the stunts that she does on that aerial pole and the lyra pole and stuff is just insane. Like I would think like, oh, I could never lift myself like that or swing myself like that, but it's like maybe 10 years ago, like she didn't have the strength to bend in that way or to go in that way, but it's like to see the consistency and the strength that those artists build, and that like they're willing to share their resources with other people that want to learn that, I think is really important to let, especially like with Cal Poly being a college town, there's people looking for outlets and hobbies and things to get involved in. And so to showcase the variety of performance art in this area and the opportunities to learn those arts is important.
Yeah, it really opens your mind to the possibilities of what the human body is capable of, or your mind and creative process. What have you noticed or learned about the people who come to Art and Soul?
I think I've learned that like a lot of them are just like happy to have somewhere to be. It's like even though it's an event that's free to the public, it's like it just seems like people over the months, it's like they know like, oh, monthly I'm going to bring my friend along to this, and I have run into some attendees who have been to the events ever since the backyard, and they've seen the progression, and it's like exciting for them to like see how other people are coming to the events, and then to be able to contribute to the different arts and crafts within the event is encouraging. And I think just like knowing that yeah, there's a variety of stuff that you can explore when you're at the event, and it's an opportunity to connect with other people who are seeking friends and community. It's just kind of like the overall vibe is like, if you want to make a friend or you want to make some art, you can do that here. But also if people are on their own there, it just seems like they end up leaving with a friend or making a friend, or like they become friends with a sketchbook. It's like, it's just cool to see how everybody connects with the materials and the people present differently.
Right. How do the art and written testimonies we collected make you feel?
Just like really elated. It was so awesome to like look through the book. Like I think halfway through the event, I went up and I was scrolling through it, and it was that book was almost full already. And it was just encouraging to see that people are looking or like interested in an outlet like this, where it's like, we want to explore our queer experiences. We want to have words for these things we're feeling. And sometimes you don't have words, you just have like an image or a feeling. And so I think what you guys did with your project was incredibly liberating for the attendees of our event, and it gave them an excuse to dig deeper into themselves, because with all the internalized homophobia and all of the anti-LGBT laws that have been passing lately, like it's just a lot of pressure within the queer community to like define ourselves and to be out and loud and proud, but it's also a really scary time. So I think that was like a really inclusive and creative way to get the community to express themselves, but in a way of connecting with their inner child and who they are now. So it was like really cool to see that overlap and to see the various stories and questions answered and pictures drawn that just like really emphasized the variety of the queer experience. And even I sat down to answer, I think the question was like, how would you describe queer? And I started to write, and I had to cross it out because I was like, there's so many ways to go about it. It's such a broad term, and it's there's so much to it, and I just kind of, my brain bursted, so I ended up opting for one of the drawing things or another one of the questions. And it's but it just makes you think. It's like what does queer mean to me? What does queer mean to the culture? What does queer mean to somebody who's never heard of a queer person or seen a queer person? It just gets those questions going, and I think continuing that conversation and making sure that people within SLO have that outlet, even though we're in like a very cozy woke area, like it's a little too cozy sometimes, and we need to make sure that that conversation is continued, and outlets like you and Catherine created are a perfect way of overlapping that creativity with the connection.
I totally agree. Thank you so much to Catherine for that idea. It was awesome to see it come to fruition. Do you feel safe or free or comfortable openly expressing yourself and hosting Art and Soul in SLO?
I do, and I also don't. There's a bit of, I think, just personal work that I have to do because I cast a lot of judgments on myself, naturally from growing up feeling like a sinner and somebody that's false and all of that. But I like being a white person in a white majority area, and even my relationship is seen as like heteronormative, even though we're both asexual. It's like asexuality is not talked a lot on the within the spectrum, I feel like, and then even with friends of mine who are bisexual and they're dating somebody that's of the opposite sex, like it feels like that that place of being able to relate to other queer people gets kind of brushed under the rug, and it's like all your past experiences and thoughts and how you currently feel is just kind of like assumed to be mute, because it's like, well, you're dating someone of the opposite sex, so you don't get it. And I think that's really frustrating, and I've had like some judgments from people throughout the past year of just like that, like I'm a white woman, so I shouldn't be the head of this, or I'm not gay enough, so I shouldn't be leading the queer community. And it's like, I didn't ask to be a leader, and I didn't ask to run this whole thing. It just kind of happened, and I was just coming up with a solution for me to seek community and for others to have a place for community, because I love connecting other people. And it so happens that I'm a white woman that is in a straight passing relationship. So it's like, it's frustrating in that way, because people will like to assume and to jump to conclusions rather than asking you about your experience. And that just, I think that's like something that I would like to, you and Catherine have like inspired me to like implement more of these practices within the event, so that there's just more conversation about the variety of the queer experience and what queer means to whoever is attending. And so yeah, I think I feel that because I organized these events and I have connected with the community over this last year and a half, I feel comfortable in that way. Like, I don't feel targeted at my events. I don't feel like it's an unsafe place for me, but I feel that because of the way that I present, it can feel unsafe to others, and it can feel like, I don't know, I've been accused of like rainbow capitalism. And it's like, what, I'm not Target or I'm not other places that are like literally just making millions off of the gay agenda. It's like, we're just trying to do things for the gay community and create opportunities and representation for them. And it's really hard to process all this stuff behind the scenes when like the overall mission is to just create community, and connect with other people, and a lot of it has been done just through pure volunteer work and off the like working a regular job and then doing things after work. And I don't know, so I think that's something where I just have to grow confidence in my experience as a queer person, and be confident that just as I wouldn't want to judge anybody else off of the way that they present themselves, I just really hope that other people are giving me a chance to be there for them and this community and continue to grow it.
What plans or projects do you imagine for the future of community building in SLO?
Um, I think, um, yeah, so creating more interactive concepts within the events where people can express their personal experiences, whether anonymously or with their name attached to it, and just putting out there that like these people exist within SLO. We don't need to pull examples from other areas to know that these experiences are happening here and that they're relevant and that they need to be heard. I think that like the PRHS Equity Club did a wonderful job with that with the Stories of Pride event they had a couple of months. And then I think just beginning to pull more inspiration from these events that are already occurring and these voices that are already trying to get out there through, through like projects like you guys have done and PRHS Equity Club. Lumina Alliance has great things going on. Gala has great things going on. There's so many pockets of the queer experience like happening throughout SLO, but to make sure that these things are being emphasized and have more opportunity to put themselves out there. I'd like to do that through our events directly and make sure to like represent the current resources that are available, represent the current people that live here and that are seeking community, and the people that have lived here their whole lives and still don't feel at home. I want to make it feel more like a safe place for them, which is a very broad statement to make, I think, and it just takes a lot of work and a lot of consistency and truly connecting with the community, which I think I'm going to be learning a lot more about this next year, because now I don't feel as alone in the team aspect. I have team members with me at Art and Soul now, and I have people that are wanting to volunteer their time to create more of these interactive features and aspects that would get the community to have more perspective within our events. And I think just building that is a broad thing to tackle, but it's like a continued conversation that I want Art and Soul to continue having with SLO and to just like make sure that we're out and we're loud and we're proud and we're including the community along the way and hearing out what the community wants, hearing out what queer people within this community need to feel safe, which, yeah, there's, so like for queer, like, sorry, one of the committees that we're working on forming is queer event safety, which is something that is becoming more and more of a necessity throughout our whole country to have for events, but it's like we have to focus on SLO and what SLO needs and make sure that these queer events that are occurring like continue to have the safety resources and like people that are providing those. I'm like getting so jumbly now.
No, you're okay.
But so plans for the future and yeah, I think overall our
You're
plan,
killing it.
it feels awful. Thank you. Yeah, I think the plans for the future are just to create more interactive outlets for artists and the queer community to connect and to express their work, to grow in their craft in a safe, inclusive environment, and to make sure that we're not just throwing an event and slapping pride on it, that we're actually actively seeking out like the marginalized communities within SLO, making sure that we get our flyers out in those areas that have less access to these events. Just making sure that we're being more active with our involvement with the community and not just creating a space that is for, I don't know, that it's not a limiting space, but we're also trying to make sure to provide the representation and opportunity for the marginalized communities, which just in general, it's a hard balance to do because we want to seek out these people, but we also don't want them to feel tokenized. We want to make
Right.
sure that everybody feels that they have this opportunity, but that we prioritize these opportunities for the marginalized communities. So it's a really tricky balance, and I'm still learning a lot. But I think that there's a lot of room for Art and Soul to grow within SLO, and a lot of room for events and programs and initiation from the community to grow throughout the year as well, so that we can continue creating inclusive and interactive events and supporting local artists and the marginalized communities.
Well, amen. I think you're doing an amazing job. Thank you so much. Do you have anything else to add that we haven't yet covered?
I think just, even like having this interview in general, I feel like with the judgments that I've had throughout this past year for the way that I identify and the way that I present and the way that I am presented, it's just hard to talk about. It's hard to be the person at the front of this nonprofit when I know that that I don't represent the people entirely that I'm wanting to assist.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just, I think overall I'm learning that, like, to take in the reality that we're in an area where it's 88% white. It's bound to be a lot of the volunteers, a lot of the workers, the people that will have time to be involved with Art and Soul may be white, but that doesn't mean that their heart is in the wrong place. That doesn't mean they're not able to put in the work. That doesn't mean they're not able to contribute. And I think fighting that constant judgment from the outlook of it, or there's a word for it.
Like how it looks at face value.
Yeah,
kind of.
like taking the organization at face value and not considering like what it, all the parts that come into creating a consistent volunteer base and consistent events and these things without a structure. It's like, it takes a lot, like you kind of, the people that get involved along the way are who you keep in your circle, and the people that, I don't know, it's hard to have a diverse, a diverse perspective of SLO when it's just like not a diverse area. And so I don't know, I feel like I'm just rambling at this point. I should probably stop.
No, you're all good.
But there's probably bits in there that could work.
It's a hard topic to talk about. Like, it's very complex issues, and we're just evolved monkeys. So I think you're doing the very best you can, and it's more than enough. And thank you so much. So I think that's good.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
and
thank
I
you.
am excited to see where Art and Soul SLO goes in the future, and how it grows from here, and what it will look like a year from now. And I think that the queer experience is continuing to be an evolving thing for queer people themselves as well. It's just like understanding who we are as a culture, who we are as a community, and so that the inclusivity and kindness goes a long way, because you never know what somebody is taking on internally and what past judgments they've had and what communities they've tried to fit into but they just couldn't. And so I just hope that our community can continue to be a safe place for people to explore that and to express that and to grow in whichever craft they're feeling led to.